Nicholas, and this is my final persuasive speech. These are my 10 people. Oh, do you not see anyone? Okay. Now? Okay, these are my 10 people. Okay. So, no business depends for existing on paying less than living wages to its workers. They have a right in this country to earn living wages. I mean, more than the bare subsistence level. I mean the wages of a decent living. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The federal minimum wage was signed into law in 1938 by President Franklin Roosevelt at the height of the Great Depression. Its stated purpose was to keep American workers out of poverty and increase consumers' purchasing powers in order to stimulate the economy. At the time the law was passed, the country's first minimum wage was 25 cents per hour, which equals about $4 today with inflation. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt saw the act as the second most important piece of the New Deal, after the creation of Social Security, and called it the most far-reaching, far-sighted program for the benefit of workers ever adopted in this or any other country. The current federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour, which translates to roughly $15,080 for a full-time minimum wage worker year-round. So I'm here today to show you that raising the national minimum wage would be a great decision for America and its economy. In order to convince you, I will show you that by raising the minimum wage, it will help bring and keep people out of debt, reduce reliance on social programs, and be good for small business owners and the overall economy. So let's begin with our first main point, which is that it will help bring people out of debt. The current federal minimum wage of $7.25 comes to only $15,080 per year for full-time workers, which falls $4,000 below the federal poverty line for a family of 3. And falling below the poverty line means that you still need that $40,000 to be able to be considered not poor. If these minimum wage employees are spending more, then businesses are earning more. And they need to hire more employees to keep up with the increased sales for the minimum wage people that are earning more. So that'll create jobs in the economy. And as a real-world example, the Wyoming state minimum wage for non-state workers is $5.15. So that's the Wyoming national average. For state workers, they make the $7.25, but for people that aren't state workers, they make the $5.15, which is about $2.10 below the national average. So if they were to raise the national minimum wage to the proposed $10.10, which Obama brought up in his State of the Union address, so $10.10 an hour, it would, over the course of a year, help a full-time, full-year management worker in Wyoming afford 7 months of rent, 36 weeks of groceries, 104 tanks of gas, which is the equivalent of 64 months of electricity, a statistic provided from the whitehouse.gov. The next point we'll cover is that it would reduce reliance on social programs. Employees surviving at minimum wage are also often the same people who must rely on additional support for the government to run social programs to support themselves and their families on such a small amount of income. Raising minimum wage means that some of these people would be able to better support themselves without leaning as heavily on social programs as they would ultimately, which would mean that they would lower taxes or cause a relocation of the taxes to other support groups that need it. From the Center for the American Progress, $4.6 billion is a large number. And that number represents how much money taxpayers would save annually if the federal government raised the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Paying workers a higher minimum wage will reduce their need for federal assistance and create huge savings for taxpayer-funded programs. According to the Huffington Post, if Congress were to hike up the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour and tie it to inflation, which means that each year it would raise $1, so the next year you would get $11.10 an hour, it could reduce federal spending on food stamp benefits for up to $460 billion over 10 years. And this could be revolutionary for our economy, because if the taxpayer money that usually goes to food stamps isn't needed there, we can allocate it somewhere that is needed, like schools or music programs or sports or creating better roads or anything that's state-funded programming. And my final point is that a common problem that people have with raising the minimum wage is that they're afraid it would be bad for small businesses or bad for the economy or create job loss. But according to the data, neither of those things would happen if we raised the minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage would mean that the minimum wage workers would have more money to spend in the economy, and that would create ripples through the economy, creating a better economy. Employees who are making a higher minimum wage feel more comfortable and satisfied in their minimum wage jobs, meaning that they are less likely to quit their jobs. And this means that there would be a lower turnover rate, which results in fewer expenses to hire and train new employees. Minimum wage increases stimulate the economy by increasing consumer spending, without adding to state and federal budget deficits. Consumer spending drives 70% of the economy, and increased demand is key for jump-starting products and rehiring. A raise in the minimum wage puts money into the pockets of low-income consumers, who immediately spend it at local businesses, not large chains like Walmart, but actual local businesses. Raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 an hour would generate $22 billion in new economic activity in communities across the country. A statistic from raisetheminimumwage.com. A widely cited 2013 study by the Center for Economic and Policy Research reviews the past 2 decades of research on the impact of minimum wage increases on employment, and concludes that the weight of the evidence points to little or no effect of minimum wage increases on job losses. So, to summarize, clearly raising the national minimum wage of the United States can provide many benefits for not just people that are earning it, but for the economy and the taxpayers as a whole. I urge you all to go out and vote to raise the minimum wage and to let our government representatives know that you care about this issue and that it's important. Raising the national minimum wage can do a lot of good for this country. It can help raise and keep people out of debt, reduce people's reliance on social programs, and be good for small businesses and the economy. I leave you now with 2 quotes. The first from an article by Crane's New York Business. Critics of the minimum wage proposal are making the same arguments as the last time the legislature increased the minimum wage in 2004. The hike to $7.15 an hour from the federal minimum $5.15 an hour. And it was phased out for over 3 years. If the change had a cataclysmic event on business that depend heavily on minimum wage workers, we certainly miss it. Objections, while merits consideration, are essentially objections to the very existence of a minimum wage, which has been a fixture in the U.S. economy since 1938 and has never once stopped the economy from flourishing. The last quote is another from President Roosevelt. Do not let any calamity-howling executives with an income of $1,000 a day tell you that a wage of $11 a week is going to have a disastrous effect on the American industry. Thank you.
Makes you want to think, though.